Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Cutting Edge Figure Skating Podcast. My name is Kim Dunaway, and in this episode, I will be covering the ice dance event at the 2025 Skate Canada International. Is it just me, or are we a little underwhelmed with ice dance this season? At first, I thought it was just the rhythm dance. This entire quad, I've been underwhelmed by the rhythm dances, but especially I feel like the year of the 80s and this year with the 90s. But even with the free dances this year, I don't know if it's because we have so many repeat programs across the board or a lot of very similar programs that we've seen people do in the past. It just doesn't seem to be bringing the excitement that I feel like ice dance has really brought in the past. And this competition, it felt like a lot of teams were a little flat. It was very low scoring, especially compared to what we typically see at Skate Canada. And it's a little weird. I'll talk about it as I go through some of these teams in particular, but it just feels a little off to me this season. And we're halfway through the Grand Prix at this point. It's a good time to sort of check in. We've seen almost everybody at this point. There's a few teams we haven't seen yet. But at this moment, this feels like Fono Baudry, Cizerone's gold medal to lose. Doesn't seem like anybody is really mounting to the challenge. And there's even a lot of, I don't want to say regression, amongst some of those teams in that next pack. So let's unpack the results at this particular event. The winners here, no surprise, were Piper Gillis and Paul Poirier of Canada. This is their first competition of the season. I've seen a lot of people talk about the fact that the top teams this entire Olympic cycle haven't done any challengers or senior B competitions to sort of get ready. They've done this the entire cycle. Both Jock and Bates and Gilles and Poirier, and then this year Guinard and Fabry did that also. And for at least for Jock and Bates and Gilles and Poirier, it hasn't really affected them when it came to the big championship titles at the end of the season. Would it have been smart in an Olympic season to have worked some of the kinks out of these programs with so much on the line this season? Maybe, but they're very seasoned teams. So I'm not worried about the fact that they showed up here and didn't look as polished and didn't score as high as they did in the past. I'm more concerned about some aspects of the program. But let's talk about the rhythm dance, which I felt like was the more successful program of the two. They are skating to Supermodel from RuPaul and I'm Too Sexy. I had really high expectations of this program. I love the music choice. So different from what we have seen other people do. I love that they use some of the lyrics to mimic some of the moves in their program. For instance, they're doing twizzles that turn to the left when the lyrics say turn to the left, and doing twizzles to the right when the lyrics say turn to the right. I really enjoyed the supermodel parts at the beginning and the end. The part that really didn't work for me was the middle part with the I'm Too Sexy. I just didn't feel like the choreography there really fit the music. It felt like it could have been to a classical piece of music instead of I'm Too Sexy. And this is the third I'm Too Sexy program that we've seen. We saw another one here, more successful, Ruth Weed and Ambry Levicious, and then we've also seen Green and Parsons use this piece of music also. So it just, to me, didn't fit with the supermodel piece as well. I do really love Piper's costume. I don't know how I feel about Paul's, but overall, I think it's a good program. Like I said, the more successful of the two. Her outfit feels very similar to me in a way that what Laurence is wearing for their Vogue program. Interesting, and they're going to go head-to-head the next time that Piper and Paul compete in the Grand Prix. The free dance, I was so excited when they said that they were doing a Vincent Reimagined. My all-time favorite free dance from them is at Starry Starry Night, free dance that they did in the last Olympic quad. It was so different. It just really put them on the map. And they came out here with basically a Starry Starry Night dress. I thought it was gorgeous. And I just watched the whole program and I just felt like it's good, but it's not as good as Wuthering Heights. It's not as good as the Air and a G-string and the tango that they did last year. They had a big issue on their lift. She could not get her feet set. And it gave me a flashback to the Olympics when they had a similar issue that they weren't able to get up at all. Here, she was at least able to get up into the curve lift, but it did cost them probably 4 or 5 points. I did love that they did include that iconic lift that they did in Starry, Starry Night. They put at the end of their program here. And the Morashecks actually aren't doing that lift this season. They did the last couple of seasons, so it makes it look a little bit more unique for Piper and Paul. They scored very, very low here, 117 points. I missed the entire day 3 of the competition. I was out of town. And so when I saw their scores, I thought they must have had a mistake. I didn't see a deduction, so I was like, did they lose an element? Nope. If you were to say that they got this lift up and performed it well, based upon what they got here, looks like they would have scored something similar to what we saw Chalk and Bates get last week, which would still be very, very big gap from Fono Beaudry and Cizeron right now. So it's concerning. I really kind of expected for them to skate well like they usually do at Skate Canada, get big scores here, probably see like a 128, something in those neighborhoods, and sort of get them a little bit of padding of what we saw Maddie and Evan get, but still be beneath what we saw Laurence and Guillaume get. And here they actually lost the free dance to Reed and Ambry Levicious. Granted, it was a mistake, but it wasn't like a fall or an invalidated element. Piper did have a little issue on one of the twizzles. But for me, the program just felt a little dull. I felt like we had gone back to some of the free dances that they did in the last Olympic quad that were just not as exciting. And I felt like they'd gone in such a cool direction in the last couple of seasons. So I'll reserve judgment and see what it looks like at Finlandia. And perhaps it will look a little bit more polished and come together a little bit more. But my initial impression is I'm a little underwhelmed, and perhaps it's because I came in with just way too big expectations, because such an iconic program for them to sort of be bringing back and reworking a little bit. So I don't know, but they won here as expected, just not the big number that they would have liked to have gotten. But it also wasn't clean. Second place here was Reed and Ambry Levicious, who continue to do very well after starting off this season a little bit earlier than they have done in the past. Like last season, they came in very, very late. Programs weren't really ready. This season, they had to be ready very soon because they were in that Olympic qualifier in the beginning of September. And I think it's really paid off for them in the Grand Prix because they've looked really polished. Like even in the rhythm dance, even though they only got a level 2 on their pattern step, I could just notice it's just really clean turns in that sequence. And I just feel like overall they're skating with a lot of confidence, and their programs look a lot more gelled than a lot of the other teams that we've seen this season. Their free dance is still, for me, very similar to a couple of other free dances that they've had this season. Well skated. A little bit of a wardrobe malfunction for Allison here, but it didn't affect them. With the second place finish here and a third place finish in France, they are very much in the conversation to get to Grand Prix final. And we've seen a couple of times in this Olympic quad that the only people that made it to Grand Prix final were people that won both events and those that came in second in both events. But we saw last season a team like Lopereva and Brousseau able to get in with a silver and with a bronze. And I think this year it will very much be the same, because if you look at Finlandia is very, very stacked. So of the 3 events that we've had so far, you definitely expect for Fono Beaudry and Cizeron to be there, for Chalk and Bates to be there, for Gilles and Poirier to be there, and really for Freer and Gibson to be there. That's 4 spots right there of teams that are either winning one or both events or finishing second in both events. And so that leaves a couple of spots. Ordinarily, you would have Guinard and Fabry there, but with a 4th place finish at France, they would need to win next week in order for that to happen. Could happen. It's hard to see that based upon how they finished in France, but I would not say that that's completely out of the conversation. The other one would be Zingis and Kolesnik, because they had a silver medal finish last week in China. However, they are at the very stacked Grand Prix in Finlandia. And you would think that at best they would be third, which would put them sort of on the bubble with Reed and Ambry Levicious. And if they finished any worse than third, that would put them behind them. And Lopareva and Bruzeau, who have a bronze, also have an opportunity if they're able to get a silver in their next Grand Prix. And they'll be at Skate America with Lajoie and Lok, who are also going to be on the bubble as well. There's a lot of implications for those last couple of teams to sort of see who's going to make Grand Prix final, but Reed and Ambry Levicious are definitely going to be in the mix. Third place here was Marjorie Lajoie and Zachary Lok of Canada. This is the first time that we've seen them this season. They pulled out of one of their challengers early. They have gone back to a previous free dance as well. Let's talk about the rhythm dance first. They were skating to selections from Jock Jams, like, get ready for this. Are you ready? They were also doing Thunderstruck. And I have to say, I was a little disappointed in the music choice. I think that their skating was really well right until they got to their choreographic rhythm sequence, and she fell out of a lift somewhere. They ended up getting an exclamation point on that element, so they didn't get it invalidated, but again, lost some points there on an element where you can get up to 8 points. They're not going to get 8 points, but you can get up to 8 points on that because I've said this last season, but I haven't said it this season. This is not something that you get a level on, even though they have certain steps that they have to complete. You don't get a level on this element. It's just GOE. And so it's kind of almost like a free element in a way if you just complete the steps, but here they didn't get an exclamation point, so that cost them some points. I felt like I was tired after watching this program. It's very energetic. They were high energy the whole time. I just feel like they are better than this musical selection. And I was disappointed again because I'm looking back to earlier in the Olympic quad when they were doing Cha-Cha Slide and Thriller, and those rhythm dances were so, so good. And then last year's the Austin Powers and the Earth, Wind, and Fire, I just didn't think was great. And I just don't think that this one is either. Now, to their free dance, however, I loved their White Crow free dance when they did in the 22-23 season. I know some people really wanted them to go back to their Roses free dance of 2 seasons ago if they were going to go back to a old program. They were originally going to skate to, I believe it was Aaron G-String, which we just saw Piper and Paul do last year, part of it. But obviously that didn't work, so they pivoted. But I felt like Roses had its moment at Worlds. That was at their home Worlds. They had this beautiful moment. They were 5th in the world that season. Whereas the White Crow, that particular season, Canada only had 2 teams that could go to Worlds because both Piper and Paul and Laurence and her former partner did not finish high enough at that Worlds after the Olympics to qualify for 3 spots. So Marjorie and Zach got left out. So that particular program never had its moment on the world stage. They did very well during the Grand Prix. They did very well at 4 Continents, but they didn't make Grand Prix final that season, and they didn't go to Worlds. And so there was some more mileage left on this program. So I agree with the decision to return to that program if they were going to do an older program. This program was number 2 on my season's best list that season. It was the highest placing free dance, and the number 1 routine that season that I picked was actually Laurence Bonabaudry and her former partner's rhythm dance that season. So this was a gorgeous, gorgeous free dance, and I thought they did a really good job with it here. There were a couple of things. Zach hit the boards after their character stuff. It was really lucky that he did not go down. I thought the last curve lift that they did where she's intertwined around his leg was just really stunning. There were a couple of lifts that just had a little bit of a hesitation to them that just weren't as smooth, but I thought in general they did really well. I thought they were a little underscored here. Honestly, they also got an exclamation point on their character step and the free dance as well. So they're going to have to figure out what exactly happened there, what they did not complete to get that. That being said, they were fourth after the rhythm dance and were still able to move up over Christine and Anthony to get on the podium. So they are in the mix for Grand Prix final. We'll see how they do at Skate America. In fourth place was Christina Carrera and Anthony Ponomarenko of the U.S. I think this was definitely a disappointing finish for them based upon where we saw them last time they went up against Marjorie and Zach, where they beat them at Worlds. Here, they did beat them in the rhythm dance. I thought their rhythm dance was just not as strong as last year's. I didn't feel like they were comfortable or as confident. I thought their lift that they do, that second variation that they do, was so awkward. Had lower GOE on that lift than a lot of the other teams as well. I was really underwhelmed and thought they were, lucky to be in third place after the rhythm dance. And basically it was because of that exclamation point that Marjorie and Zach got on their choreographic rhythm sequence that allowed them to place ahead of them in the rhythm dance. The free dance are skating to Notre Dame de Paris, which is my all-time favorite program from Davis and White. I think Christina's dress is beautiful. I just don't love this program from them. I think the first half is stronger than the second half. The second half really starts to lose me a little bit. It's very angsty. I don't think that that's what they do best. They had some technical issues here. Their ending technical score was just under 65. It was 64.97. They had some reviews and got leveled down to 62.84, and they lost to Marjorie and Zach by a little over a point. So it was those technical errors, a spin that got leveled down, a lift, I believe, got leveled down. Their 1-foot step sequences, which have been so good the last couple of seasons, not as strong here. Christina only got a level 2. So not their best technical selves. I just think that they really did so well a couple of seasons ago with that Perfume program. It wasn't music that we've seen used an awful lot. In the last 2 seasons, they've gone to pieces of music that we've seen a lot. Carmen last year, even though they were very successful with it, and then Notre Dame de Paris, which we've seen and heard a lot. And I just wish they would have sort of stuck with the more out-of-box music than what they did. I don't love their music choices in the rhythm dance either. Very low score from them than what we have seen them do, and they just don't look as polished and prepared as they have in the past. We have not heard anything about Christina's citizenship, which is starting to get very worrisome at this point. I have no idea if the government shutdown has anything to do with the delay in that either, and I'm sure that's probably starting to stress them out as well. I hope that at Skate America, we can see a better version of both of these programs. In 5th place was the Moraschecks. In the rhythm dance, they were doing Bon Jovi and AC/DC. Another team doing Thunderstruck. I really do like their twizzles as Thunderstruck is coming on. I think it goes really well with the music. Their free dance, I was a little annoyed because skating to Malaguena, which is great music, right? It's so overused in the 90s when you couldn't use programs with words in them. I don't feel like we've seen a ton of it in ice dance just because we don't do patterns anymore. It was definitely very, very used back when you had flamenco and paso doble music fairly regularly. She's got this long skirt, and I just had this conversation last week with Maddie's dress, and I used the Moraschecks as an example when the long skirt has not gone well, when there has been a mistake, and we've seen this movie before. So it makes me nervous when they have the long skirt. That being said, her skirt was not distracting like Maddie's skirt was distracting last week. Their 1-foot step, she's got her hand on the skirt and really uses it there. But I also kind of felt like watching their skate to Malaguena actually kind of made me appreciate Chalk and Bates' unconventional flamenco to Paint It Black a little bit more. Sasha Cohen is always going to have the GOAT Malaguena program for me. And like I said, it's fine. There's this point where they do this sliding move where he's like dragging her across the ice by her foot. I don't really know how I feel about that because it made me look like, did she fall? And then they ended up with the fall deduction, which I'm still not exactly sure on what move that came from. That move made me a little bit nervous because it's just got to be done just right. To me, there's just so much potential for things to go awry. Their rotational lift got an extended lift deduction, so they got a couple of points off. They were only 8th in the free dance, but they were able to sort of hang on to a top 5 spot here because of their lead in the rhythm dance. They got a really good score, which for me is their stronger program. In 6th place here was Lim and Quan. Both of these programs are getting stronger the more that I see them. I thought the rhythm dance was just very enjoyable and clean. I'm really starting to like the Men in Black number from them. And the free dance, I love so many elements of this. I criticized them last year because I felt like their Cruella program, they just kind of took all the elements out of the Umbrellas of Shorebrook program and just put it to different music. And it was like the same lifts. And this year, they've changed all of those lifts just a little bit. Like they do this curve lift where she's upside down this year. In the last couple of seasons, she's been in a split. And it's still very stunning, but it's different. And I appreciate that they're differentiating their lifts and giving us something different and not just giving us what we have seen before. I think that they're bringing a lot of emotion to this program. Even Quan is bringing a lot of emotion to it as well. And I really, really, really like it. And I probably would have had them 5th here over the Morashecks. In 7th place was Marie-Shade Laureat and Romain Lagok of Canada. And I think this has to be a bit of a disappointing finish for them, honestly, to be behind both the Moraschecks and Lim and Quan. Their rhythm dance is to Prince. I just don't feel like either one of these programs stand out. The Prince music is fun. It's just, I couldn't tell you anything that they did in that program. I couldn't. I like her jumpsuit, but it's just not memorable to me. The free dance feels like a lot of tricks. Not sure there's a lot of skating. It just doesn't feel like it's a good fit for them. Their skating is perfectly fine, but Cleopatra feels like it should be more serious, and theirs isn't really serious. And because that's not really their personality, like that's not what they do best. If you think about like their Pink Panther or their Corpse Bride, and even last year with their kind of country western, and then this year it just, to me it doesn't work. They're not getting the scores that they want to get either. I still think they're likely to get that 3rd spot for Canada, but I'm just underwhelmed by this team this season. In 8th place was von Rinsburg and Stefan of Germany. In their rhythm dance, I couldn't place their musical choices at all, which I kind of appreciated. Honestly, it was more of a Latin kind of flair, and I thought they did it well. Their free dance, I thought they skated well also. This one also had a different Latin flair to it. Don't find them to be particularly memorable. I remember them skating to Phantom of the Opera last year. I remember it being fine, but I wasn't excited. And that's kind of what I feel like every season with them. Like, it's good skating, but the programs for me are just a bit of a miss. This one feels like maybe the strongest piece that they've had, and I like it. I just don't love it. All right, so we got to talk about the 9th place team, and that was Emily Broady and Ian Somerville, who, if you didn't watch this competition at all and you just saw them in 9th place, you would be like, okay, what mistake did they make this week? And they didn't make a mistake like they made in France, but they ended up in a worse place and they scored worse. Can't explain it, to be honest. In their rhythm dance, he did slip on his first twizzle, but he was able to complete them just fine. In fact, I was watching him, so I didn't even realize that Emily had an even bigger mistake. She ended up with a level 1. I just feel like they got hammered unnecessarily in this program. I do have just some minor nitpicks about Ian's outfit. Can we just get him some bling or something? It's just very, very dull and black. Like, Emily's got a lot of bling. He has basically nothing. Can we give him something? But Ian, after when they got their score, he was like, okay. And then in the free dance, again, a couple of things, like the third set of twizzles for her. They had a couple of lost levels here and there, but otherwise I thought they did well. But the judges had them ninth in both technical elements and in PCS. When their scores came up, Ian actually started laughing. Emily put his hand over his mouth to get him to shut up. He was like, wow. Oh, boy. There's just so many things going on right now with Mita. There are rumors that Tanith and Charlie are perhaps getting a divorce. I have no idea. There's nothing to confirm that, but there has been a lot of smoke in that direction. I have no idea if that is affecting what's going on over there. This is my issue with Mita. I feel like every season, one of their teams has good material, has good execution, and the rest of them are just falling flat. And it doesn't seem like at any one time, multiple teams over there are thriving. And I hate to always compare them to Ice Academy of Montreal, so I'm not. I'm going to compare them to Maurizio Margalio, who has Turkula and Vers-Louis, and Orihar and Pyrenin, Lajoie and Kaffa. And it seems like every year, those teams are improving. Turkula and Vers-Louis, maybe not as much. They're a little bit up and down as far as their technical elements, but their programs are always really fantastic. And whereas with Mita, I don't know that any of the teams there are really thriving. You know, Caroline and Michael go over there after having a really strong season, and I don't feel like they've really thrived there. Emily and Ian had a really great season 2 years ago, made the world team, and they did medal on, and it was a weaker Grand Prix last season in France. But it just seems like none of these teams are getting a push like we have seen teams from Igor Shippleband's camp, of course from Ice Academy of Montreal, and we're talking about other U.S. teams that they're competing against. And I don't know. They skated first in this competition because they don't have a lot of world standing points. They definitely need to be sent to more challengers, and they are going to be going to Warsaw Cup. They need to skate as many things as possible. They definitely are too good of a team to be stuck skating at the top of a Grand Prix event. But that doesn't always have to hinder you. We saw Sui and Han go first last week in Cup of China. Of course, Laurence and Guillaume went first in France. And yes, they come in with big, huge reputations, but still, these scores are just very, very concerning. It just starts to worry me about their partnership with each other. You don't want it to get to the point where they feel like, is this the right partner for me? I wouldn't fault them if they started questioning, is this the right training place for us? I just feel like they have such beautiful elements at times, and it just sucks to see them sort of get buried here. And then the last place team here was another team that their scores, I just didn't feel like match what we saw from them, and that's Missette and Maroloff of the U.S. also. Their rhythm dance, I have to say, I said this in the first event of theirs that I covered. It's just too many musical selections. They're doing Be My Lover, Say My Name, Everybody, the Spice Girls. It's like they're trying to channel what Chalk and Bates did last year a little bit. We're just going to do all of these different songs. It's too many songs. No, it's not 11, but it's still too many for me, and too many different style songs. Like if they came out and did 4 Destiny's Child songs, or 4 Spice Girl songs, or 4 Backstreet Boy songs, it wouldn't feel as disjointed as it does doing an R&B song, a pop song, a boy band song. It's just a lot, and I just don't feel like they ever really get into a rhythm. And they just seem slow to me. They were 9th place after the rhythm dance. And then in their free dance, I do like certain parts of this free dance. It feels like a waltz at times. It feels very old school. It's a little bit quirky. It just felt very long for me. It felt, again, slow. They only got 99 points here. And in their Kiss and Cry, they had an excellent poker face, but I know they had to be disappointed getting less than 100 points because this is a team We saw get like 110 last season at Skate America in their free dance. Their season's best this year is 107. And I don't think that this performance was really all that different than what we have seen from them earlier in the season. So very disappointing and frustrated for these last couple of U.S. teams here who have a ton of potential and maybe didn't perform at their absolute best, but I felt like in both cases performed better than what their scores indicated for them. All right, so my Pamchinko award for this week, I'm giving to Lemon Quan. I just feel like they came out and did two really, really fantastic performances. I thought they should have been a little bit higher in the standings. And I just think that they have improved over when we saw them just last week in China, even. Really impressed by them. Let's look ahead to NHK Trophy. A lot of storylines with the dance event here. For one, we have Guinard and Fabry, who are going up against Fear and Gibson again, coming off of their worst finish at a Grand Prix in, I don't know when, 4th place. We got to go back to last quad before there was any Grand Prix where they were less than 2nd at. If they were to come in here and win, they would be likely into the Grand Prix final. Even with 24 points, they would have 24 points with a win. That would be enough to get them there. A 2nd place finish here is not going to get them there. And it would be so weird to have a Grand Prix final that they weren't at. So I'm actually rooting for them to win here because Fear and Gibson are going to get in regardless. If they get a 2nd place here with their 2nd place in France, like they're in, really would like to see Guinard and Fabry get into the Grand Prix final. That's provided that they cleaned up some of the levels that they missed at France. And I just hope they come in with a good, positive attitude, which I know is going to be really, really hard coming off of that very disappointing finish. Of course, even the bigger storyline is probably going to be, this is the return of the Shibutanis. We have been hearing about this since May, and we haven't seen anything. We haven't seen a clip of any skating. We saw a clip of them bickering. Well, I wouldn't even say they were bickering. We saw a clip of Alex screaming at Maia, which I don't know. I don't know if it's normal for them or not. I know, like, when we saw the Ice Academy of Montreal documentary that they did last Olympics, Maddie Hubble and Zach Donahue would bicker a lot, but it was like both-sided. It didn't feel like they were verbally berating each other. Everybody said this was like totally normal for them. They're just both very competitive and passionate, right? So it sucks that the first clip that we see of them is not of any kind of dancing, any kind of lift. It's this. So I'm sure that they're very eager to get that narrative sort of out. And we don't know what to expect. I mean, are they a threat to finish in the podium? Are they going to be in the finish somewhere 6th to 10th? I have no idea. If they do finish on the podium, all of a sudden they could be in the mix for Grand Prix final too. So I'm very, very, very curious about this. So I'm going to be looking and hunting for practice footage on Thursday from participants that are going to be at practices for NHK Trophy. I think that let's just go through the entire roster here. We've got Fabry and Air of Canada, Tashalarova and Tashler of Czech Republic, Orihar and Pirinen, von Rinsburg and Stefan, who are going back-to-back, Fear and Gibson, Guinard and Fabry, Yoshida and Merida, and 3 American teams, the Shibutanis. We've also got Wolf Kostin and Saravetsky making their Grand Prix debut as a team. Be interesting to see what their scores are stacked up with what we've seen from both Broady and Somerville and Peyton By. And then we're going to see Graydon Parsons, who unfortunately had to withdraw in China just like last week. And hopefully his pelvis is better and they're able to compete at a high level, because this is an event where they certainly would want to show up well against the Shibutanis. All right. That completes the ice dance event. Love to know what your thoughts were of this event. What do you think of Piper and Paul's new programs? What do you think of Lajoie and Lagaz rhythm dance? Especially, what do you think about all the repeat programs that we're seeing this year as well? What do you think about Emily and Ian? Like, are they getting buried? Is it fair? Do you think they were appropriately scored here? Curious as to some of what you guys are thinking. So you can find me on all the socials at Ice Skate Podcast. You can send me a line at thecuttingedgepod@gmail.com. I'll be back with pairs and women, so stay tuned. Hope you have a good rest of your day and week.